Jayden Daniels looked sharp. Brian Robinson spoke like a man on a mission, and Javon Kinlaw just told the league exactly what kind of defense is being built in Washington. All of that right now on Locked On Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into Locked On Commanders, where we watch the film, break down the data, and call it like we see it. I'm your host, David Harrison, and this is your daily podcast covering the Washington Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Not only am I here with you 5 days a week, but I'm also covering the Commanders for Sports Illustrated's CommanderGameDay.com and WUSA9.com, your local CBS affiliate. Thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen or view today, whether you're an everydayer or just checking us out. I appreciate you. And to those everydayers who come through for every episode, a special thank you to you, especially if anybody out there has not yet subscribed for free on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this episode. Please take the time to do so now. On Tuesday, we hit 14,000 subscribers on YouTube. An amazing number for relatively the time that we've been on YouTube here on Locked On Commanders. So I greatly appreciate all of you who have supported and continue to support the show. If this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you for coming through, for finding the show. Hopefully you like what you hear or you see, and you come back again very, very soon. Coming up on today's episode, Javon Kinlaw set the tone for a rebuilt defensive front. Brian Robinson Jr. sounds off on staying healthy and getting paid. And we're starting it off with Jayden Daniels showing exactly why QB1 is QB1 on day one of the Washington Commanders mandatory minicamp. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Jayden Daniels. Look, during all of training camp, we're going to chart the 11-on-11 drills. I did it last year, did it the year before. I do it every year, right? During training camp, every time we get an 11-on-11 drill, I'm going to chart it. I'm going to give you the completions, incompletions, the plays, the highlights, the lowlights, whatever it is that comes from Jayden Daniels, your starting quarterback for the Washington Commanders. Well, on Tuesday, first day of the minicamp, right? Minicamp is not just practice for the players, it's also practice for us. It's the first full-blown practice we get to watch in its entirety. And so I thought we'd do that here and start off the mandatory minicamp that way. And Jayden Daniels looked confident. He looked like he was in rhythm, operationally sound with the first team offense. The offensive line for the first team offense in these 11-on-11s, at left guard, Brandon Coleman, which is pretty much where he has been for all the offseason program work that we have seen. Left tackle was Andrew Wiley, and the right tackle was Josh Connerly Jr. So a good way to see Josh Connerly Jr. in there with the starting offensive line group, and then Andrew Wiley playing left tackle as Laramie Tunsil sat out team drills, set out some of the individual drills as well in the early going, but participated in the second half of individual position group drills while the team was doing 11-on-11s and 7-on-7. So Laramie Tunsil there for the mandatory minicamp, just like we expected. More on participation coming up here in just a minute. But Jayden Daniels, his 11-on-11 performance, 2 sets of 11-on-11 drills. One of them was a pretty stagnant, just kind of one stationary spot, and we're just going to run plays from there. The next one started off at the plus 40, so that's the opponent's side of the 50-yard line, at the 40-yard line. It was a end of half, end of game scenario type of deal. They're trying to preserve clock, trying to move the ball, go no huddle, control some things at the line of scrimmage. Really good command, no panic, no rushing from Jayden Daniels in those no huddle scenarios, just getting guys set, right? He was talking to multiple dudes at one time, making sure everybody was set. Referees were present, no formational or functional, or I should say operational penalties were called. There was one false start at one point in time, but that wasn't on Jayden. That was on the player that moved too early. So first set of 11-on-11s, first pass of the session, short pass completion to Noah Brown. Second pass fell incomplete, targeting Luke McCaffrey, a deep crossing route, overthrew it. Jayden Daniels did. Third pass was a screen play to Deebo Samuel, completed, but it was blown up by defensive lineman Jerzon Newton, so would not have been a good play. And then the final play ended up in a practice sack by safety Percy Butler. Of course, as we know, practice sacks, they don't blow the play dead all the time, and they didn't hear. Jayden Daniels did end up throwing the ball. It was a little bit high to Deebo Samuel, but he was able to catch it over Mikey Sanderson. So not a great start to the first 11-on-11 set. Second 11-on-11 set went just a little bit better, and that was the end of game, end of half scenario drill. First pass, middle of the field, hitch route to Zach Ertz, get on the line quick, all those things, no huddle, setting everybody up at the line of scrimmage. Again, targeted a hitch route for Deebo Samuel. Was a little too far inside. Deebo couldn't corral it. Third play was a handoff to Brian Robinson to gain the first down, getting a new set of downs for the offense. And then finally, a Luke McCaffrey connection from Jayden Daniels on another crossing route, 29 yards out for a touchdown. So the final 11 on 11 set stat line for Jayden Daniels on day one of the mandatory minicamp: 4 for 6 passing, a touchdown, 1 explosive play, and 1 sack. We did have some red zone drills, some 7-on-7 drills as well. Wide receiver Chris Moore had a red zone touchdown. Mikey Sanders still slipped in coverage. Jayden Daniels was a little bit high on another pass, and Deebo Samuel went up and climbed the ladder. Really nice catch by Deebo, but Chris Moore is a guy who continues to stand out here in the offseason. And Chris Moore was not a guy that we spent a lot of time talking about in the offseason. Michael Gallup was a name. We even talked about undrafted free agent Ja'Cory Brooks, guys like that maybe threatening for the bottom of that depth chart. But I'll tell you what, man, Chris Moore is stacking some plays. He's having a really good offseason, really good OTA period, and a good start to the mandatory minicamp. So if he can continue that through the mandatory minicamp, certainly take some momentum into training camp and potentially threaten to get a roster spot. Veteran receiver in his 30s, but if he can make plays, he can go out there and make plays. The Jayden Daniels, Zach Ertz connection, tight end Zach Ertz, quarterback Jayden Daniels. I mean, turned out to be arguably probably the second most valuable connection on the team last year, behind Jayden Daniels and Terry McLaurin. And they are humming. I'll tell you what, right from OTAs into this mandatory mini camp. I mean, we might as well be back in January with better weather because they have not missed a step as far as, their practice performances here in the OTA period. Again, like I said, Chris Moore standing out. Zach Ertz also standing out. Luke McCaffrey also standing out. I had the touchdown catch, and I'll tell you right now, it wasn't just a practice touchdown catch. That thing, if that's the coverage that they face in the defense, and that's the offensive execution, that thing would have been a touchdown in real life. Luke McCaffrey catching the ball on the over route and then taking the perfect angle into the end zone, hitting that speed a little bit, and getting into the end zone for the score for the offense. Would have been great. Luke McCaffrey really looking smooth, looking confident, like Cliff Kingsbury kind of alluded to, playing a lot faster, not thinking as much. You can see it on the field. The incompletion that they did have was not necessarily because Luke was doing anything. The throw was just a little bit off trajectory, which is why we do practices as early in the offseason or the preseason as we do. Dan Quinn talks about some year 2 players like Jayden Daniels, like Luke McCaffrey, and pretty much all of them, right? And said, quote, they're about to make a big jump. Guys like Jayden and Mikey, et cetera, named pretty much every year 2 player on the roster. They're exactly where I hoped they'd be. End quote. That was before practice. And then we go out there and we see Mikey Sanders still making some plays. We see Percy Butler, not a second-year player, but still coming through, making some plays. Jayden Daniels obviously looking cool, calm, collected. Luke McCaffrey doing his thing. Jerzon Newton breaking up the screen pass. So there was some pressure. I will tell you that. There was some pressure getting in on Jayden. But again, no pads. So grain of salt, you know what I mean? Don't crucify the offensive line too much there. Certainly Bobby Johnson, offensive line coach, will have his say on why those pressures happened and be able to tell those offensive linemen how to prevent them from happening in the future. Let's get to participation before we wrap up this segment. Terry McLaurin, not present, not expected to be present, was not present for the start of mandatory minicamp unless a contract gets done between now and Wednesday morning. Between now and Thursday morning, Terry McLaurin will not be at mandatory minicamp as he continues to hold out for a new contract. I know a lot of fans are itching to get that deal done and just want to see it happen and all those things. I will tell you, I've been telling insiders today, would not hit the panic button on this at all until we get like a week out from training camp. And I know it's a really long time to wait for one of your best players, if not your best player, according to the vote, second best player, to get their new contract. But I am confident it's going to happen. I was asked by an insider, is there any panic? Is there any sense that Terry, this thing could not get done or something like that? I have no sense of that. I'm not picking any sense of that up. Like even talking to some of the coaches that we've been able to talk to, like they talk about Terry in present tense. They're not talking about Terry as a maybe or as a could be. They're talking about Terry as a present tense. So I'm not too worried about it. Marshawn Lattimore, I know some people had wondered, if he would show up. He's kind of a free spirit. Marshawn does what Marshawn wants to do. Marshawn certainly appearing fully active and practicing, looking pretty healthy, looking pretty good there too, wearing number 2. Laramie Tunsil, like we said, present, limited in practice, did some O-line drills in the second half of the session, did some individual drills on his own, kind of away from everybody. In the first part, did not participate in team drills. Again, you just kind of assume a little bit of a tip of the cap to a veteran. Bobby Wagner, not in attendance, reportedly by a team source, was an excused personal absence. So nothing to worry about there, Bobby. I'm pretty sure Bobby Wagner knows what he's doing while missing one day, or maybe two. We'll see if he's there tomorrow. But Bobby can miss a practice or two, and I think he'll be all right. While Jayden Daniels was making it look easy on the field, Brian Robinson Jr. reminded everyone that nothing about this season will be, and he's ready to carry the weight. That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time for you to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Look, if Jayden Daniels keeps trending the way he is, you better believe Washington will keep closing the gap between them and teams like the Philadelphia Eagles, just like Indiana is trying to do right now in the NBA Finals. But for now, the Oklahoma City Thunder sit at minus 650 favorites to win the series. If you've got a read on how that momentum might swing, why not turn it into a same-game parlay? And if you're new to FanDuel, it's a perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. On day one of mandatory minicamp for the Washington Commanders, Brian Robinson Jr., running back, didn't just talk about getting a new deal. He talked about earning it, staying available, and proving he belongs in the future for Washington.
I mean, that's been the goal since I stepped foot on this campus. It's just to prove, who I am, to not only just the program, but to myself. And, biggest year to do that, just to continue to show, who I am and, what I'm about. And I'm excited to be able to continue along here and to show why I'm here and I'm supposed to be here.
Specifically, what have you been kind of focused on working on wise, technique, pass pro? What are you kind of honing in on over these last couple of months?
Really just staying sharp. Everything. I never get comfortable with nothing. Like even the skill sets that I'm best at. I never get comfortable with. Constantly working my craft. Day in and day out. And the biggest thing for me is just being available. Just being on the field. I think when I'm healthy and I'm well, I'm held when I'm well for sure. And the biggest thing for me is just being available. Being out there on the field where I can continue to produce. And everything as far as the craft, I'm gonna stay sharp. Continue to work. Put in the extra time. Extra hours in the building, outside the building, whatever I need to do to just stay sharp.
All right, that was running back Brian Robinson Jr. talking to us, the media, after practice on Tuesday, day one of the mandatory minicamp. And, just a little bit of what he kind of talked about really stood out to me. The toughness, talking about durability, admitting that even when he came back from his injuries, probably wasn't really at his best and just trying to come through for the team and give them everything that he had. And I think that you admire that about any football player, just the ability and the desire to kind of, go through and gut through the injuries. I mean, these guys go through a lot of things that we know about, but they also go through about a lot of things that we don't necessarily know about. And you heard him, right? I'm hell when I'm well. It's a great quote from Brian Robinson Jr. It's kind of what we talked about before, right? When he was healthy, before those injuries really set in, one of the best backs in the NFL. The Washington Commanders had a top 5 rushing game just in running back focus alone before you even encounter or include Jayden Daniels. And then right there, about the time, B-Rob suffered one injury to his right leg, another injury to his right leg, a third injury to his right leg. The offensive line started getting nicked up and dinged up, and those things just kind of happened. You know what I mean? And that's just kind of what happens in the NFL sometimes. So durability is certainly a big thing. You've heard the saying, availability is the best ability. And for Brian Robinson Jr., that's certainly going to be a big factor, but not just availability to just simply get on the field, but to be on the field at your best. And certainly that's kind of Brian Robinson that you want to see. B-Rob also talked about having, guys in the system that can be balanced and versatile and kind of play everywhere. And I really think there's a chance here, I think, this year for the Washington Commanders to bring 4 running backs onto the active roster. I think especially when you look at what happened last year, B-Rob getting hurt, Austin Eckler getting hurt. They had to lean on Jeremy McNichols, I think probably more than they wanted to. Chris Rodriguez bounced back and forth from the practice squad, was then signed to the active roster. They went through a lot of players in that running back room, and running back, as a lot of people talk about, has arguably the shortest shelf life of any NFL position. Running backs tend to get banged up so much that they kind of lose their mojo. So if you're the Washington Commanders, I think you have a lot of evidence and a lot of reason to look back to last year and say, we definitely need to have, obviously you're going to keep at least 3 running backs on the active roster, but you definitely have a case to make for keeping a 4th running back. You know what I mean? Now they're far, far away from making that decision, obviously, but I think it's something that as we get closer to training camp and as we get through training camp, it's going to be something that we need to kind of talk about. And there's certainly some candidates. Obviously, Jeremy McNichols is going to be a candidate for one of those last 2 spots if they do carry 4. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, rookie out of 7th round rookie out of Arizona, is someone that we've all kind of been talking about. Demetric Felton has looked really good in camp. Chris Rodriguez Jr. is slimmed down. He's definitely more compact, still a big dude, but very, very compact, and has been working. He told me after practice on Tuesday that he's dropped about 10 pounds and he's continuing to lose weight and just wants to get a little bit smaller, get a little bit more agile, get a little bit more nimble, right? Things like that. We'll actually hear from Chris here on the show during the quote-unquote dead period following mandatory minicamp before training camp. We'll get a chance to catch up with Chris, so make sure you come back for that later on in the month or into July. I'm not sure when we're going to do it, but we're going to do it at some point in time. So, yeah, certainly a possibility for having 4 backs and certainly some good candidates for who those 4 backs could possibly be. And Dan Quinn kind of talked about practice plans, right? And was asked, like, from last year's minicamp to this year's minicamp, kind of what's a little bit different. And he said that, for the most part, the cycle of operation or the cycle of function for the minicamp is mostly the same. Like, they're going to do some team drills, they're going to do individuals, all that stuff. But he said where they have really kind of changed is things are a little bit more customized this year. Like, they're kind of catered to specific players. And I think that really kind of shows up when you talk about like who's going to practice when. Javon Kinlaw not practicing at all on Tuesday. Bobby Wagner, was excused by the team and not having to come out there. We see Laramie Tunsil go off on the side and kind of do his own thing for a little bit, then come over and do some individual drills for a little bit. No teams for him. So like, there's just a lot of these kind of like different factors. I think we look at a guy like Brian Robinson Jr., like, yeah, he needs his conditioning, but remember, like, he had some soft tissue issues last year and everything. Like, you want to kind of keep him rested as much as possible. So I think you're going to see a lot of running back rotations and maybe not your starting guys getting the most touches necessarily during these portions of the offseason. So we'll continue to see how it goes. One of the things that stood out from 11 on 11s, again, they did hand the ball off to Brian Robinson Jr., made a nice little jump cut, found a hole, hit it. Again, they can't hit each other, so he got through the hole. There was certainly traffic there. The defense was certainly waiting for a short run play. Probably would have been about a 3-yard gain and a first down, which is what the officials on the field marked off and gave the Commanders offense in that drill. So while Brian Robinson Jr. spoke with a steady confidence, Javon Kinlaw made it clear he's ready to bring toughness and attitude to a defensive front that's already starting to take shape in mandatory minicamp. That next, right here on Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On Commanders brought to you by Skylight. And say goodbye to sticky notes, scribbled fridge plans, and last-minute mix-ups. The Skylight calendar brings clarity to the chaos and helps families stay organized without the stress. This sleek digital display syncs with your existing calendars from Google, Apple, Outlook, and more, so everyone sees exactly what's happening and when it's happening. We talk a lot on the show about structure, how Jayden Daniels is executing it, how Brian Robinson wants to thrive within it, and that's exactly what this calendar delivers. In our house, assigning each person a color has been a game changer. No more I didn't know excuses, no more double-booked nonsense, just one clear view of the week ahead. Would seeing your whole week in a 15-inch HD screen help you stay focused? Because I'm telling you right now, it helps me every single day. Right now, Skylight is offering our listeners $30 off their 15-inch calendars by going to skylightcal.com/NFL. That's SKYLIGHTCAL.com/NFL for $30 off your 15-inch calendar. Javon Kinlaw didn't take any snaps on day one, but he didn't really need to. His words after practice made it clear what kind of mindset he's bringing to the Washington defensive line. Javon Kinlaw meeting with the media after practice, despite not actually practicing, certainly was involved, certainly was communicative, was there on the sideline, wasn't just, smoking and joking. Obviously, nobody's smoking on the football field anyway, but wasn't just hanging around for no reason, right? And then we talked about after practice, making some of the strongest comments of the day, including reuniting with Darryl Tapp. Said that Coach Tapp knows what he's getting when he gets Javon Kinlaw. Always brings a lot of juice, always brings a lot of energy, and said that's the kind of coach you need in the dog days, and he's referring to the dog days of summer during training camp, you need a coach like Darryl Tapp. I was standing there watching 11 on 11s and listening to Coach Tapp, kind of yell at his guys like, hey, call it out, make the shift, do this, do that. And I mean, this dude is like a good, 40, 50 yards away from us easily. And I can hear him like he's just standing right next to me. Darryl Tapp, always one of my favorite coaches to catch up with from the Washington Commanders roster, and clearly one of Javon Kinlaw's favorite coaches as well. On the team culture, this is a pretty good comment from Javon Kinlaw. He said, quote, it's a great environment. And then he continued to say, point to guys like Adam Peters and Dan Quinn, and then say, quote, I love that they felt as if I could fit in with the culture. So that must mean I'm a good guy, end quote. And, look, there's some, I don't want to say misgivings, but there's some judgments about Javon, about what he's going to bring, what he's going to do. But either way, you at least have to love the mindset. We'll see what the production is. We'll see what the play brings onto the field. But no matter what, you have to love the mindset that Javon is bringing in. Let's hear a little bit from Javon Kinlaw now, starting off with what it takes to make the run defense better in 2025 than it was in 2024.
It's a mindset. It's physicality. That's really all it is. Know your keys, but you got to have the will to not be blocked at all. And that's all it comes down to. Not to, excuse my language, not taking from nobody. And that's what it's all about when it comes to the run game.
How much can it help you? You went out and got Eddie's a big guy. You're a big guy. Dietrich, big strong guy. How much can that help just up front?
Oh, it's going to help a lot for sure. It's just going to really add on to what we already have. So, and I just can't wait to really get in there and mix it up.
All right. Once again, Javon Kinlaw there, one of your new defensive linemen for the Washington Commanders. Really like what he said about the mindset, the physicality of the run defense and everything else. And again, every time you listen to Javon, I've heard Javon Kinlaw interview since, before he was with the Washington Commanders, always just kind of like the way he just kind of has that presence, man. Like he's the kind of dude you want in the trenches. And he mentioned those trenches. He mentioned getting better in run defense. He mentioned having some new guys, but also having some guys that they're joining to make this front better. Jazon Newton again had that screen play blown up to Debo that we talked about earlier. Dietrich Wise and Jacob Martin were opening up as first team DNs at one point during the 11 on 11s. Again, don't put too much stock into that kind of stuff. I did ask Dan Quinn on Tuesday kind of the outlook for Jacob Martin, and did say like outside linebacker, DN type of guy. I really do feel like he's kind of going to be that Dante Fowler, just a little bit more run defense focused and still capable of getting to the quarterback as well. Not a defensive front seven guy, right? But Tyler Owens had a really good play in teams, had tight coverage on Ben Sinnott. Ben Sinnott made the catch. Marcus Mariota threw a rope right over Owens and Sinnott's shoulder, inside shoulders, and Sinnott just used late hands and made a really, really great play. But Tyler Owens certainly in tight coverage, continuing to look good during his offseason program here. Dan Quinn talked about that defensive line unity specifically, said, quote, they've done a lot together. That mesh has been very intentional. Elevating the players is also elevating the staff. And if we can all do that together, we can really go after it, end quote. I shared that clip. Question was from Donna Hopkins at Pro Football Plus. I shared that clip on my Instagram, on Twitter. So if you want to hear it, you can go to either of those places. So Kinlaw's message matched everything we've seen from the new look defensive front. Intentional, physical, focused. And we liked what we saw. We liked what he discussed even before minicamp. Washington isn't waiting for pads to set the tone on defense. They're setting it right now. That's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Commanders. Coming up next, we're back for more minicamp day 2 out in Ashburn. More notes and observations for you. In the meantime, if you got questions or comments, you can text me directly by becoming a Locked On Commanders insider at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders, and you're going to get notes from me specifically during press conferences. Training camp or minicamp practice is a little bit tricky because I have had terrible service every day we've been out in Ashburn, but it kind of is what it is. For your second listen today, check out Locked On NFL Scouting with Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino as training camps get closer, roster moves keep coming, and they're going to help you stay informed. You can find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you're getting this podcast. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day. To all the everydayers out there, we see you, we appreciate you, and I thank you. Until next time, stay safe, be good to each other. We'll talk again soon right here on Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.